Thanks, Antonia.
Welcome.
Question from Susan: how does she get to the Brightspace portal on the FIT site?
Yeah, so it's just brightspace.fitnyc.edu.
Antonia just put that in the chat.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And then you just log in with your username and password, usual one.
Okay, so for those of you who don't remember, we're just going to finish out the engagement piece, and then we'll get to and this engagement and assessment sort of weave into each other. This afternoon's workshop, title of this afternoon's workshop is Authentic Assessment. And so just as a reminder, this morning afternoon, we went into engaging your students in discussions. Again, that's student interaction, and then assignments. We went through those forms. Now what we want to do is we want to go into quizzes, and just like discussions and assignments, quizzes are best created and edited in their own section. And what I mean by that is we're not inside any of the units right now. We're going to put the quiz in a unit like we did with the assignment and discussion, but you have the full editing power on your quizzes. And by the way, quizzes comprise tests and quizzes, tests, and exams. It's a single form in Brightspace for all three of those. Brightspace just calls them quizzes. But best done in the quiz section of the course. And then like before, we're going to pull it into our unit when we're done creating it. So I'm going to click on quizzes. And again, even if I'm creating an exam or whatever, Brightspace just calls it a new quiz. Now, creating a quiz is a little more of a process than creating like a discussion question where you work right inside the form. With a quiz, it's sort of a two-step process in that classically we'll create the questions first, and then we'll actually create the new quiz. So when I go into the quiz section, I come up to this. Now, again, yours, if you're following along with me, yours is likely empty. I have some quizzes in here and tests and stuff. But what we need to do is we have to think about our questions first, because when we start filling out the quiz form, the first thing it's going to ask us is, okay, where are the questions and what are the questions? So, so that's why I'm going to draw your attention first over to this question library. And when we click on the question library, we see, oh, okay, you know, as the name implies, this is going to be a list of all the questions that I have available to put into my quizzes, tests, or exams. So you'll see our two choices sort of right up front. You know, the biggest buttons on the left are either new, are we going to create a new question and add it to the library, or are we going to import? Now, some of you may use a textbook or any publisher created content. You should be aware that many times with textbooks these days, questions are available for you to upload into Brightspace. And so if that is available to you, I highly recommend you use it. Some textbooks provide, you know, 100 questions per chapter, and they upload very quickly. The process is fairly simple. So let me just show you that first. When we import, essentially at the very beginning of the hour, we were talking about importing course content. Here we're just going to import a question, but a set of questions, but the process is similar. And really all it asks for is to upload a file, and usually your publisher would provide that file for you to download to your computer. And so at this point, we assume that it's on our computer, usually in the download section. And because I'm going to pretend that we downloaded it from a publisher. So here in Brightspace, all it does is when I click import and upload a file, it asks me, okay, where is that question bank? And just so you know, question banks are a very sort of particular format. And so they usually don't pose many problems in during the upload. I've done it several times with faculty. So when I click browse files, it wants me to look through my computer. Usually things land in the download section when I download them off the web. And so I did download a sample file. And as soon as I find it, I will, yeah, right here. It's usually called a CSV file, if you can see that on my computer. But if I select that and I open it, this is just a 7-question file, but it uploads it into Brightspace first, and then when I click import, it pulls it in. And I know it pulled it in because it's I have 4 pages here of questions, and it'll land at the end of the list of questions. And you can see they're just generic ones, but they do sort of illustrate the different question types I have available to me. So let me show you what I mean by that. When I create a new question, okay, so that was importing, but when I want to create a new question, my first my first choice is section. Those are these folders over here. So if you have topical, um, if your units conform to like any chapters in a textbook, you might want to create a little folder and put all the questions in a folder. It makes it easier to work with later on. But that's what those sections are. But uh, Brightspace does really does a good job of providing all different types of questions here for us. And I know some of you are familiar with Blackboard, so not all of this will be brand new information. But so my choices here are true, false, multiple choice, and multiple select. Those are the first 3 choices there. Multiple select is multiple choice when there are several correct answers. So multiple select is just a multiple choice question where there's more than one correct answer. These first three are graded by Brightspace. We're going to designate that we can designate the correct answer choice, and Brightspace will correct those automatically. And then we have written response question. This is kind of like an essay type question. Creates a field for students to type in. We have a short answer question, multiple short answer. These 3 are graded manually. So if you use those on an exam, you'll have to grade them yourselves. And then we have fill in the blanks, matching, ordering, and 2 types of arithmetic / formula questions. These 3 here, fill in the blanks, matching, and ordering, those are graded automatically as well. And then we have Likert, which is usually used, or Likert, I heard it is now the proper pronunciation. Those are used for surveys usually. Okay, so let's take a look at a multiple choice question just to see, what the nature of these questions are. So I'm creating a question manually, and something like when meeting someone for the first time, that's only going to have 2 choices. Do I use Google or two? So I can give a hint here for each of my questions. I could decide later on whether I want to give it, whether I want to use that hint, but I can essentially embed a hint into each of my questions, which is kind of nice. And then here I put in my answer choices. When I click the check mark, that is the correct answer choice. So there's only two choices here. Not the best question. Yeah, so when I'm creating a multiple choice questions, I designate the correct answer choice. I could add more answer choices. Pretending that I had like 5 choices here, I could randomize the order of the choices. So every time this question appears, the answer choices are randomized. So that makes it so, just mitigates the cheating factor just a little bit. So, if one student asks another student, what's the answer to number 2? For one student, it might be A, for another, it might be C. So this randomizes the order of those answers. And when I save this question, it adds to my bank. Now you guys are just starting out with this, so it'll appear right here. Just to check, as I mentioned before, every time we create something new, it always drops to the bottom of the list. So here it is. And I can keep on adding questions here. The forms are very easy to fill out. Like this is a written response question. I just put in the question text. I can enable the HTML editor. That's kind of nice. All those tools up above for students to answer. I can allow student learners to add attachments, etc. So each of these question choices, sort of have some neat, sort of features to them. A short answer question. Let's see. So I put in the question text. I put in the correct answer. And pretty easy. The default points, if you already have a system that you use for quizzes, like for instance, if you know your quizzes are all going to be 20 questions and they're all going to be, each question is going to be worth 5 points, you can put in the default points here. As you can see, I have a 10-point default here. But it's not necessary, and I'll tell you why. Because that's just the default points. Once we put the questions into a quiz, and then we make the quiz out of a certain amount of points, those questions are going to auto adjust in terms of what each one is worth. This is just the default worth of a question if you feel like you want to put it in. So so that's your call. And so I would fill up my library with the questions first. Okay, maybe put them in a folder, maybe not. You have some functionality here where I can, select questions and I can move them into a section here. And so so it's pretty easy to just order my questions in terms of putting them in the correct folder. But now let's get to a quiz. I'm going to click on Done Editing Questions. So again, when I create a quiz, the first thing it's going to ask me is, okay, what questions do you want? So it behooves me to sort of create the questions first. But let's look at the quiz form. And one thing that's really great about Brightspace, they just recently did this too. This form looks a lot like the assignment form, which looks a lot like the discussion forum. And so somewhat familiar features here. So very first thing is, I'm going to just call this the Unit 1 quiz. And so it's going to want me to put it in the grade book first. Now I pulled out all of my categories. That's okay. It doesn't belong to a category yet. I'll show you how to deal with that when we set up the grade book. I'm going to make this out of 100 points. I can put a due date on it if I want. Again, that will add it to my calendar and the calendar for students if I put in a due date. And then if I could put in a description, please answer all questions, something like that. Just to see where it lands. And then the next thing it wants is the questions. So add existing questions. I can create them right here this is only a 3-question quiz or something like that, and I want to create them while I'm using the form, I can do that. You can see this, new question. It gives me all the choices that I had before, but I'm just going to add some existing questions. So I tell it to browse the question library, and I could start looking through my questions and adding questions. So it doesn't do a good job of displaying this little screen here. So I'm just randomly picking questions. I kind of want to get to 10 questions. And so we'll just keep it at that. So it says total points here 49, but that doesn't matter because I just made the grade out of 100. So essentially what it's going to do, it's going to treat, since I have 10 questions, it's going to treat them all as 10-point questions, which is just fine. Okay. And then over here, very similar to what we saw before, the availability dates, again, start date is visible, end date is hidden. I have those release conditions that I can do. Again, those are prerequisites for being able to access this quiz. Special access is if I have a student that needs more time with this. I can, when I click manage special access, my roster comes up. I don't have any students in this course, but my roster would come up and I could select students, and then I could alter some of the parameters for this quiz just for those students. I can password protect this if I wanted to, and I could manage the IP restrictions. These two features are, I don't think they'll be of use to you. I recommend you just leave them the way they are, blank, unless you feel comfortable doing it. It's available to you. But if password protecting a quiz would mean that I, the instructor, then have to have another thing to manage. And I would just kind of like to leave the quiz the way it is. Now on a quiz or an exam, you may want to put in a start date. And as I mentioned, you provide that window of opportunity for students to take it. So, if you tell them, this is because I'm going to show you how to time this quiz. Even if this is like an hour or 2-hour quiz, let's say, exam, I do have to give them a range of dates in which to access this quiz. So I could add those availability dates to the calendar, which is a nice feature. Okay, that'll tell the students that their quiz is now open for them to take on the calendar. And that's really all I need to concern myself with in terms of availability dates and conditions. And here's where it gets, a little feature rich. I can time this quiz. So when I think about the timing, if I want a clock to appear and I want them to this to be a timed exam, let's say, I can click the timer settings, and I could do a recommended limit, but I don't know what that really has in terms of, it doesn't really have any effect on how the quiz will behave. When I do an enforced time limit, that will start a clock. This will last 120 minutes for students. They'll get a grace period of 5 minutes. I can adjust both these numbers. So I can adjust how long I want this to last for them. And then I can, once they exceed the time limit on the quiz while they're taking it, what do I want the quiz to do? Should it allow the student to continue working? That's the default. Prevent the student from making further changes, or allow the student to continue working, but automatically score the attempt as 0 after an extended deadline. Those are your 3 choices here. What you should know is that if students do exceed the time limit, you will see that in terms of when it comes down to grading. One of the first things you'll see is how long it took the student to take the quiz. So it's not as if you won't be able to adjust grades, if students exceed the time limit. You don't need to choose, this is somewhat draconian. just automatically score it as 0. Allow the student to continue working means that the time is run out, student can keep working. Prevent the student from making further changes means that the quiz shuts down after 2 hours and the quiz is submitted automatically. So so that's what those timer settings about. You get to adjust the paging in terms of how many questions per page you want to appear for students. This one's a really popular feature. Shuffle the questions and sections within the quiz. So in addition to, randomizing the answer order that we could do at the question level, here we can shuffle the actual questions so that they never appear in the same order for the same, for any two students. So so that's kind of nice. Again, this will mitigate cheating. Student can ask, hey, what's answer number 8? If the answer choices are randomized and the actual questions are randomized, again, it can help you out in terms of mitigating cheating. This is where I choose to either allow or not allow hints. By default, this is off. But as I mentioned, you can embed a hint into each and every question. And so if you allow hints, that hint will appear for students. And here is another cool feature. We can disable email, instant messages, and alerts within Brightspace while this quiz is active for students. So they can't instant message with each other or email each other in Brightspace. They could obviously do it outside of Brightspace, but not inside Brightspace. And this is kind of neat. It's kind of a little feature down here, but a header and footer. You can put in the top and bottom margins any information, links that you think might be helpful for students in taking this quiz. That they will remain sticky. In other words, as students progress through the quiz, the header and the footer remain constant. And so they'll be able to see that information while they're taking the quiz, if you want to use that real estate. This is where we can manage the attempts. So this is saying 1 attempt is allowed for students, but we can allow more than 1. So if I were to allow 3 attempts, I could, enable that. So and if I can also determine how the grade will be calculated, average, highest, last attempt, etc. On new attempts, only allow answers for previously incorrect questions. That can be interesting. And I can also set up some attempt conditions. So if on attempt 1, they get between a certain score, I could tell it to only in between these two thresholds that it will release attempt number 2. So if they get between like a 0 and a 60, let's say, then it'll automatically release another attempt. And all of these features here in attempts and completion, sort of invite the opportunity to think about these quizzes as more of a formative time on task learning activity than a summative assessment, if you will. So there are lots of instructors that they use it for reading comprehension for the chapters, and they'll allow 3 attempts for students. And knowing that when a student comes to a quiz, and especially if it's publisher created questions, you can essentially have students make 3 stabs at a quiz, and each time they try, the questions will be randomized. And so I have seen a lot of instructors use this quiz form as more of just a task for getting students' eyes on the content. And so it really depends on how you want to use it. It's certainly, we can use it in the traditional fashion as a quiz or a test. It's certainly set up for that, but these multiple attempts And especially when you combine that with the ability, with the enhanced, ability for the quiz to grade itself, offers some, just some compelling options in terms of, maybe I want to just give 3 attempts at this. Let students, every single assessment in an online class is potentially collaborative and potentially open book. So we have to keep that in mind. And, it really depends on your discipline, the rigor um, of the course itself and your teaching style, whether you're comfortable with something like that. Um, but I assure you, many of your colleagues are already doing it. Again, allowing multiple attempts and treating and usually lowering, by the way, um, the 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 value of the quiz. In other words, making where you might make quizzes 40% of the grade. Uh, Most of those instructors that I've seen that have used this as more of a learning device than an assessment device have sort of lowered it to like 20%. So it's not a big contributor to the student's final grade in relation to other assessments. But the mere fact that something is called a quiz or an exam or something like that, students' antenna go up and they place a lot of value on it, even if they're told it's only worth 20%. So it's just something to consider. And then here we have evaluation and feedback for this quiz. Do I want to auto-publish the attempt results immediately upon completion? By default, this is what's selected. So student takes quiz. As soon as the student's done with the quiz and hits submit, it's a computer, so it's super fast. If it's self-grading, it comes right up and it will show the student what his or her grade is. I can deselect that. Synchronize to gradebook on publish. This I would keep selected unless I wanted the opportunity to grade some of the questions. If there are um, instructor graded questions on it, like essay type questions, I might want to not necessarily synchronize it to the gradebook right away. And when published, what do you want students to see? Do you want them to see their grade? And if you do you want them to see the incorrect questions with the correct answers, incorrect questions without correct answers? So you have these sort of choices here. And this customized quiz results displays is kind of interesting. It just shows you what the default is here. Your quiz has been submitted successfully. This is what Brightspace sends back to the student automatically. But I can edit all of these, and so I can edit that message. I can edit which types of questions are going to be shown to students. I could display the class average, grade distribution if I wanted to. And that's it for the, for the quiz form. And so when I save and close it, I'm going to click save and close on this quiz. I'm going to try to remember the title of it. I don't remember the title, but it's always at the bottom. And not this one now. Let's see. Culture quiz. Unit 1 quiz. That's what it was. Sorry. Unit 1 quiz. I see it. What it's doing is it's sorting by due date or availability dates. I'm not sure. In any choice, in any case, what I want to do is I see it here in the quiz section, and just like before, I successfully created my quiz, but I got to remember, I got to put it in front of students. So I want to put it in my unit. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on content. And here I am in my first unit 1. And just like before, I'm going to click on existing activities. And I guess I got to scroll down a little bit for a quiz. And here's where I'm going to navigate to my Unit 1 quiz. And when I click on that, it drops into it's my unit here. Now, one thing that's you know, a lot of times what we'll want to do is you know, just check it, see how it's going to work. First of all, I can see just by this eyeball over here that this quiz is not yet visible to students, so it's hidden. All right, when I run my cursor over, I see that word. And if I wanted to, just as a reminder, I could click on my name. I could look at this course as a student. Why don't I just do it? I'll click on the student view. Again, I clicked over here on my name. Now I'm in the student view. It tells me that I am. And when I go into my first unit, I want to see if the quiz is there. And so there's no quiz yet here. No assignment either. That's interesting. All right, so I'm going to click back on here and I'm going to X this out. This is how I get back in as the instructor. And so here I am. I'm going back in as the instructor. And when I do that, I'm going to take a look at this quiz first of all. Okay, so it was successfully hidden as it promised here, and that's how I check on it. And so I'm going to just make it visible. Number one. But I do want to see this assignment, polite conversation, due May 26th. See, this one was invisible too. So I'm going to make that visible. And if I wanted to, I could go back in as a student, and I could go check and make sure those things are visible. And okay, so any questions on quizzes, tests, exams? Again, we look at the question library first, we get our questions all set, and then we fill out the form. We click on new quiz and we fill out the form. Yeah, you okay with that?
I have one quick thing.
Okay.
And forgive me, you may have said this, but if you have, so for instance, I teach art history, and usually, you know, they need to enter for a quiz question, they need to enter the name of an artist, let's say, right? So will the system pick up, you know, the first name only if they put both names? You know what I'm saying? Like if I put in the entire answer as a short answer, fill in the blank answer.
Right.
So to use Michelangelo as an example, right? I put Michelangelo Buonarroti and they just write Michelangelo. Will it still count it as correct?
Oh, no, it's very literal. The short
Okay.
answer questions, they're
Okay.
very literal, down
Yeah.
to spaces too. You gotta, you know, be
Okay.
careful. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. Um,
I actually have a question related to that. Is there any kind of spell check for the students to see? Like, will they be alerted if they make a spelling error?
no. I mean, it's so weird. I know this is really strange, but just going to show you real quick. In the rich text editor, I'm just going to go to create a file so we can see the rich text editor for a second. See this is the rich text editor, this sort of suite of tools right here. There is an accessibility checker, but there is no spell checker. So I know that's odd because usually there is. Now, when I'm in Chrome, if I misspell something, like the browser tells me, you know, gives a squiggly underline, tells in, you know, for misspelling, but very strange. So sorry, I'd like to say yes, but the answer is no.
We'll have to request that upgrade.
Yeah, if it's available, yeah. And then Andrea, there's also you had a question in the chat there. Is the question library specific to each course? Yes, it is. As far as I know, it is, because I work inside a couple different courses, and all the question libraries are unique to the courses. Okay. All right. So that's going to conclude, you know, the engagement piece in terms of, you know, in general, what you want to do is you just in a fully asynchronous online course, you want to have a regularity to the activity. So you want students submitting at regular intervals. For me, I taught French, and so when teaching a foreign language, there's just a lot of short exercises that students have to get through, vocabulary sets and grammar points and things like that. And so I had students submitting almost every other day, if not every day. In my course, it was easy that getting a regular submission sort of momentum going on. But you do want to try to achieve that in your courses. And not every discipline is the same. Not every teaching style is the same. But the nature of the online student is in some ways exactly the same as the face-to-face student. In other words, they're motivated by grades. They want to perform well for you. But so what they do, what a typical online student will do is he or she will come into the course and say, okay, what do I have to get done? What do I have to get done? Another way of asking that question is, what is expected of me? And usually they go right to the tasks. They look for assignments, they look for quizzes, they look for what are the tasks that I need to complete to prove to the instructor that I'm engaged in this course. What you want to make sure of is that, like I said, at regular intervals, there's something for them to submit. Because if it's all just reading and reading and reading and reading, it's hard for you to get an idea of how well they're progressing through. So it's a point I made sort of in passing before, but I'll just sort of reiterate it now. All of the passive activities that we have in our courses, and I don't mean that as a pejorative, I mean that as things like reading and watching a video, things where I as a learner am simply observing or absorbing or those kinds of things. That's all great. But the best courses I've seen is when all of that passive activity feeds into the tasks that they have to complete. So you want to make sure that there's a strong connection between the assignment that you're having them do and then what you had them doing preceding that assignment. If they were reading chapters, if they were, watching something or doing a demonstration or even an offline activity that you're having them do, just make sure that, when it comes down to the graded activities, the point in the course where they have to submit something to you, that they're able to pull from those passive activities and that reading those readings or watching those videos is essential to do well on the task that they need to complete. Because there are lots of students that go right to the tasks, and then when they read the instructions of the task, hopefully in those instructions, it says, well, you have to read this first and you have to watch that video first before you can actually do this. So that's, that's students engaging in content, and in the feedback process, students are engaging with you. If they have questions, they're engaging with you. But as I mentioned, I'll just mention one more time, students engage most deeply if you set up a situation where they need to engage with each other. So that and that usually only happens in the discussion activities. Okay, so we're going to shift gears, and we're going to talk about what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the grade book. Is the next big thing that we kind of have to set up together. So if you're clicking along with me, if you're in your course shell, feel free to do this. This will all be sort of identical to what you're looking at on the screen, and if you're clicking along, what you see on in your courses. So I'm going to click on the grades. And as was mentioned earlier today, disregard that error message, by the way. I have stuff in this course that you won't have in your course. But it is kind of nice that I clicked on the grades link and Brightspace sends me what they call a note in red, which is, really an error message, but that's okay. And what this is telling me, by the way, and you might be confronted with this, is that my percentages are off and I need to, fix some stuff. Let's just keep it at that for the moment. But as I mentioned, when you grade things in Brightspace, they drop into the gradebook automatically. That's nice. You don't have to keep going into your gradebook and checking it to see if the grade came in. Once you grade it, it goes automatically into the gradebook in Brightspace. The gradebook is fairly easy to use. Okay, so I guess that's a pretty vague phrase there. Fairly easy to use. My only reference point at this juncture is with Blackboard. So anyone who has experience in Blackboard, I know there are a few in the room that do. The gradebook is simpler than the Blackboard gradebook, and but in essence, what is really wonderful about online courses is the ability for students to check their own grades at all times. Students really like this feature. It's in all the different learning management systems. And so you're going to see every student in your grade book, and the student is only going to see his or her row in the grade book. So I'm going to jump between courses where I do have stuff in grade book, so I can show you what that looks like. But mostly we're gonna work in this course that we've been in. This is my FIT course, so let's dig into the grade book a little bit and show you what it is. The default entry point is the enter grades view of the grade book. And so I don't have any users here to grade. That's okay. This is similar to what you're going to see. And then there's the manage grades view. So I'm clicking along these links up here. The manage grades view is a very nice view of the grade book in that it is vertical. It goes up and down. Most grade books go all the way across like a spreadsheet. And this is where I manage my grades. So what that means is I can alter on all of these assignments that I have in here. So I have some, assignments in here. I can edit the grade book information for each and every one of these assignments. So if you find yourself in a spot where, I pulled in all my all my assignments or something from somewhere else, or I created all my assignments first without creating the grade book, that's all okay, because for each assignment, you can alter your grade book information here. So I can alter the name in the grade book. It has this cool little feature for a short name that only I can see as the instructor. So if this is, Unit 1, Assignment 2, something like that, I can create a little code for myself. That kind of tightens up the grade book view for me, the instructor. I know that's hard to see right now, but I'll show you in a little bit. This is where I can create categories too. I can create a new category, or this tells me that where this assignment is, in which category. I can adjust the number of points. For gradebook information, in the gradebook for each assignment, I can say, okay, on this particular assignment, even though it's worth 100, I can enable it so that I can, give students 103, 104, or whatever. I could designate things as extra credit. That's what this bonus feature is all about. I'll talk about grade scheme in a second, and I can add rubrics here. So there's lots of things I can do in this. I'm in the grades section, and where I am is in the manage grades. So, gradebook is, somewhat high stakes in terms of it's very visible to students. It's, students are very concerned about their grades, so we want it to function as expected. But everything is always editable, so by you, the instructor. And so just keep aware that it might take you a full first semester to, feel like you really have your arms around the grade book. It's not uncommon in the scheme of things that, you have to create at this juncture. Just be aware that the grade book is fairly easy to use, and you will get your arms around it if it doesn't happen perfectly in the very first semester. Okay, so let's just get used to the interface here. As I mentioned, the entry point is enter grades. Here we are in the manage grades view. And again, this is where we can alter gradebook information about things pretty easily. And then we have these schemes. And just so you understand what the term is, a scheme is the points to letter grade conversion. So, let me show you what one looks like. It'll more or less explain itself. Here's the FIT general scheme. I have my fingers crossed that this looks right, and boy, does it. All right. So in this scheme, in this gradebook scheme, the way Brightspace puts it, an F is anything from 0 to 59, a D is anything from 60 to 69, C minus 70 to 73. So it provides the ranges for the letter grades. And Brightspace adds this other piece of functionality that people kind of like. It's this color scheme. So if a grade lands, within a certain range, it's assigned a certain color. Okay, so there's a question in the chat. So this is grading scheme. Not a confusing question, by the way, as questions go. Does Brightspace distinguish between points and percentage in a whole course? For example, I could assign 100 points to something just so it aligns with ABC grading, but it might be worth 4% of the overall grade. Not confusing. I suppose if someone weren't, dealing with this night and day like I am, it might be confusing, but it's not. So, yes, what we're going to do is we're going to use the setup wizard here. And the one of the first questions the setup wizard is going to ask is, do you want your gradebook based on percentages or points? So we can have our whole course, whole grading scheme set up with points, and usually a points-based grade book is one where the entire course is worth, let's say, 1,000 points, and then all of the tasks and gradable activities that we have inside the course will add up to 1,000. And then probably a little more common than the points-based grade book is the percentage-based grade book. And that's where we have categories that are worth a certain percentage of the final grade. So I could have categories like assignments, like discussions, like exams, like projects, those kinds of things, all contributing for each a unique percentage to the final grade. In a percentage-based grade book, the percentages of all the categories combined needs to be 100%. So my discussions could be worth 30%, my exams could be worth 50%, and my assignments could be worth 20%, and then I'd have to stop there. I could always add more categories, but I do have to adjust those percentages so they all add up to 100%. In a points-based grade book, I still have categories, but each category is worth a certain amount of points. And so that's how it works. So your question there, if I get 100 if I get 100, a student gets 100 points on, and regardless of the letter grades that correspond to that 100 points, that will only be a certain percentage of the category that it's in, and then the category will be a percentage of the final grade. That's how it works. So, yeah.
So I think you kind of answered it. I'm used to doing it on Canvas, and one of the things is that I guess the confusion is that when I assign a point system to it, if I say, okay, this is worth 100 points, or I guess what I'm trying to say is I still am not clear on, do the students, I know that when they look at the grade book, they can see how much each assignment is worth in the overall scheme, but that's a little bit different than the percentage that they get on that assignment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it'll get adjusted when they look at the grade book. I don't have to adjust it. I can just say, this is, you got an A on this or something. And then
Yeah.
is that right?
They can, and I'll show you when we set up the grade book. You have control over whether students will see the actual number, they can see the points, they can see the percentage, or or the letter grade. You have control over what they'll see in the grade book. But your point is well taken. 100 on like a single assignment is always, sort of couched in a category. So it's a percentage of that category. If there are 10 assignments, it would be 1/10 of that category. If there are 10 assignments in that category. And then that category in relation to their final grade is also a certain percentage. What I recommend is that in your course information documents, and again, that is one of the first folders that I recommend you create for your courses, your syllabus essentially broken down. I would try to be as clear as possible as in regard to the categories, how they contribute to the final grade, and then how things inside those categories contribute to the category grade.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I try to be as clear as possible kind of again and again, and I still find the students get kind of attached to the point numbers, and then they can't sort of adjust to like, no, that's just I don't know.
No, I know. Do you have a points-based grade book or a percentage-based grade book?
Well, this was for Canvas. I had or have had a percentage. It was percentage, but the individual assignments were
out of points. Yeah. But that's what we would call a percentage-based grade book. And I think the setup wizard, when we run it, because it's going to ask us all these kinds of questions, might clarify things for you a little bit. So, Andrea, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. It's kind of related to these questions. So I'm still trying to understand what you're saying about the categories, so that the categories, which are like assignments, quizzes, discussions, those are weighted, but then within each category, each individual piece is also weighted. So if you have a quizzes category, but you have 3 different quizzes that are worth different things, is that how it works?
Yes.
Okay.
And for the most part, you can have the quizzes category, okay, and then you can have 3 quizzes inside that category.
Mm-hmm.
You can determine whether they contribute to the quiz category grade equally, or if they have separate values.
Okay.
Okay, so
okay, so I could have 2 written paper assignments, but one is worth 10% and one is worth 30%.
Yeah, you can do that.
Something like that.
In the same category.
To that category. And then if that category is worth 50%, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to do all
when
this.
When the final grade is calculated, it's really, all it does is take all the category grades and then, creates an average, or creates a final grade, I should say, not an average, but creates a final grade.
Okay.
Okay,
thank you.
All right. Tammy, did you have something to say? You activated your camera. You looked like you had something on the edge of your, all right.
I was going to plug Jeffrey in the CET has grade book workshops. So, and they will be recorded. So I was just going to plug those, but I sent them all to you in the email that you all are getting. You're going to see the training opportunities.
Okay.
Thanks for asking.
Sure. Okay, so just as a reminder, what I did was I clicked on grades and we went through these 3 different views first: enter grades, manage grades, schemes, and now we're at the setup wizard. And what the setup wizard is going to do, it's going to ask me a series of questions, and then it's going to set up my grade book. That's what a lot of these wizards actually do. And so when I click on that link for the first time, what it shows me is the default settings. In other words, the settings that are currently enabled in the grade book. So it tells me, I'm just going to read through them, but we're going to go through each one individually. That I have a weighted grade book. It tells me about how to release the final grade. It tells me, what it's going to do with zeros, essentially. And then which scheme I picked, and how I can, a few options I have for managing my own view of the grade book, and then how I can, a few options about managing the student view of the grade book. So it's going to ask me questions on each one of those. So I'm going to go through this with you so you understand. It does a good job of, sort of showing off the features of the grade book without having one in front of you yet. So if I click the start button on the setup wizard, here I am, step 1 of 7. So it's going to start asking me questions. So here is the first question. Do I want a weighted grade book or a points-based grade book? So I guess the first thing to understand is weighted means percentages. And more importantly, the categories are represented by percentages. So those different buckets I have of types of assignments, do I want them contributing a certain percentage to the final grade? As in this example, the assignments category contributes 20%, the final exam 80%. Not a great model here, but that's fine. And within that assignments category, each assignment, and there are only 2, contribute to that 20%. No matter what, my grade book, the percentages of my categories needs to add up to 100. So 20 and 80, we're at 100. We're looking okay there. So the first question in the setup wizard is, do I want that, a percentage-based grade book, or a points-based grade book, where each category adds up to a certain amount of points? It renders the same ratio, if you will, in that here the assignments category is worth 40 points, final exam worth 200 points, final grade is out of 240 points. So Jeffrey and I talked about this the other day, by the way, and we're big fans of the weighted grade book. We find it simpler and easier to use. Just so you know, this is just the categories that are worth certain percentages. You can have all of your assignments worth points. Okay, this does not affect the ability to have assignments and quizzes and all your gradable activities worth a certain amount of points. They don't have to be percentages. It's the categories that function as percentages rather than points. Here they would function as points. Each category would be worth a certain amount of points. So I'm going to go with the percentage-based grade book, the weighted grade book. This last one is a formula-based grade book. I wouldn't recommend it for the faint at heart. Especially your first time through in Brightspace, I'd recommend keeping it simple. So I'd caution against that. And so when I click continue, I'm going to go to the next step. And the next step, I think, is a no-brainer. Jeffrey and I kind of agree on this. I think by default, you're going to have calculated final grade, but adjusted final grade is the same thing as calculated, only it allows me, the instructor, to modify or adjust the final grade as needed. So I think the calculated final grade is, again, for large scale classes where there's 200 or 300 students, and really just what you get is what you get. And as the lecturer, I'm not going to go in there and adjust individual grades. But I think for us, adjusted final grade makes the most sense. It gives the most power to the instructor. And then we have automatically released final grade. I'm going to recommend that you you deselect this, it might be selected automatically. I just, again, from instructor to instructor, I would want the opportunity to check things first on the final grade. And just since it's my first time teaching in Brightspace, I might just want to hold off on this. I can change it at any time. So I would just choose adjusted final grade and be done with step number 2. Step number 3 is takes a little bit of explanation, even though it looks so simple. And so here's what it is. In calculating my grades, what do I want the grade book to do with respect to zeros? So if a student does not hand something in, okay, so I can drop ungraded items means that if I have 15 assignments and a student has only handed in 10 of them, drop ungraded items means it's only going to average out those 10 assignments. It's going to drop the ungraded ones because any zeros are going to be ungraded. Or treat ungraded items as 0. That means that by default, every single assignment is a 0 in the gradebook until it's submitted to me and I grade it, and then that 0 is replaced by the grade that I create. That's how these gradebooks want to behave, and so it's just how they work. The drawback to the second one that I have selected here, treat ungraded items as 0, is that it puts a 0 in every column for every single assignment. So it's just a matter of students getting used to seeing it. Okay, but when they look at the grades and they see, oh, look at all those zeros, those are all future assignments. It just takes a little bit for them to get used to, oh, I see, when you grade it, it's going to replace the 0. But it also, in terms of this other feature down here, automatically keep the final grade updated. It averages all those future zeros into the final grade. So it gives a miscalculation of the final grade. It's just a weirdness. It really, much of this depends on your teaching style and the nature of your course. So let me explain that. If I'm teaching a class and I only have, let's say, 15 things that students are going to hand in over the course of a 16-week semester, I would probably keep drop ungraded items, and I would go in and tend to my grade book manually. So if a student didn't hand something in, it means that I would have to put in a 0 manually in that column. Okay, and then and that's okay. So drop ungraded items means that I'm willing to put in zeros where they belong once all assignments have been handed in. Treat ungraded items as 0 is more akin to my teaching style as a French instructor. In other words, I have over 150 assignments in the course of a semester, little short assignments, but since I have so many, I don't want to be burdened with putting in the zeros. So I'd rather they just drop them in. I'll explain to the students how the gradebook is behaving, and that's how I'll manage my course. So those are your 2 choices here. So Rob, you have a question.
Yes. So with the drop ungraded items, so let's just say I have 4 assignments and a couple of students only did 2 of them. So if I chose that, would that average out their projects the same way as the students that did all the assignments?
Yes, only until you put in the zeros manually, which you can do.
Okay.
Okay, so that's all that's the real difference between these 2 is drop ungraded items means I'm willing to put in the zeros manually.
Gotcha.
And treat ungraded items as 0 is really I'm willing to explain to students that this is how the gradebook behaves.
Gotcha.
Because they're not going to see an accurate average until the very end of the course. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome. Other questions? Okay, let's keep going. And so here, number 4 is the grade scheme. I'm not, first of all, I think your grade scheme is well done. The FIT general scheme. There are some in here that are not well done. And what I mean by that is like they don't, it's just, they're just not well done. I don't know why they are the way they are. I'm not sure whether you're going to have a choice on this or how many choices you're going to have in terms of applying a scheme. Usually their campus, they're consistent across the campus. But this is where you pick the points to letter grade conversion um, for your grade book. And once we get past that, this is a very quick question. Number of decimal places to display for you, the instructor. So, I chose, the default is 2 here. I chose 2. And then when I continue, this is where it gets interesting. This is where we want to think about what students are going to see, because as I mentioned before, one of the best things about an online course, students can access their own grades. They can read them. Obviously they can't change them, but they can see them at all times. So very handy. So what do we want students to see? So the very first thing is, in terms of the details of student grades on their assignments and their categories and all that, do we want them to see a points grade, a weighted grade? And we can choose all 4 if we want. Grade scheme symbol, that's the letter grade. Sorry, points grade, percentage grade. Grade scheme symbol is the letter grade. And then that grade scheme color that we saw in the scheme. We might want them to see all 4. It makes for a lot, but they can see it. And then some instructors like just the grade scheme symbol. You got an A, you got a B, you got a C minus, whatever. So this is your call as to what, again, the student view, what students are going to see. And in keeping with that, I came up with this kitschy idea here. Number of decimal places to display, again, for students. I chose 0 because I just don't like squabbling over, tenths of a point with my students. So, but you put whatever you want here. But I do like the 0 choice there. And then number of characters displayed, I just accepted default. It was 50 before. It asks me one more time, do I want to display the final grade calculation to users? And I don't want to. By the way, I think for me personally, I never had like huge classes, like 25. I would consider that huge for a foreign language class. So I was always comfortable with, informing the students that if you want if you want to know your average to date, your current final grade, if you will, please just email me or contact me privately, I would say, because they could use a few different ways of contacting me, and I will calculate that grade for you. And I'm always happy to talk about grades. They can see what's in terms of this display final grade calculation to users. That's just the final grade. They can see all their other grades in a grade book. So, for many students, it's enough for them to see, their sort of list of grades, even if the final grade calculation is not set or not visible for them. Okay. So this is the last question on the wizard.
Rob, I have a quick question. You put 0 for the number of decimal places on this screen, but on step 5, you put 2.
Right. Step 5 was my view of the grade book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's the
Got it.
difference. And then the student view, I don't want them seeing my 2 decimal places.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Mhm.
And then that was the last step, but I guess the last step is it shows me another summary of all the things that I've chosen, all the features that I've chosen in the grade book. So once I click finish, just if you're clicking along with me, when I click finish, I'm not really finished because I'm setting up my gradebook for the first time. And this is where you can see right of the grade options, there is create a new grade category. And this is where I'm going to create the categories. Before the afternoon session started, I deleted my categories. So I'm sort of starting fresh with you guys. This is where I'm going to click on create a new grade category. And this is where I want to be, sort of prepared with all of this stuff can be changed, but I want to be prepared with, what my grading scheme is. And many of you probably, most likely have, pretty clear view of what that is. But this is where I'm going to put in, I'm going to tell the grade book that my assignments, and I can put in a short name. So I'll just show you what that is. Short name is going to make sure that this gradebook column is as skinny as possible. That's going to be helpful because when my gradebook is up and running with students in it, I'm more or less going to be scrolling across all of my my assignments to be looking at my grades. I'm going to show you a picture of that in another course in a second. But let me finish with this category. So I'm going to put in assignments, a short name, that's fine. I could add a description, but my students never needed a description before. I'm going to assign a weight to this. And if you're not sure, what the weight should be, one thing I encourage faculty to do is think about the amount of time students are going to spend on each of these types of activities. So my students are going to spend a lot of time doing their assignments. So I want to make it 40% of the grade. If I want to, I can make the category grade to exceed the weight if I wanted to. So in other words, I can fudge this even after students have it's an easy way to curve grades. So if I see my students tanking on all my tests, I can increase the weight of the assignments for everybody. And then here I have inside of this category, this is what we were talking about a little bit before. Inside of this assignments category, I have this distribution question to answer. So here, in terms of my assignments, all of my assignments are pretty short, pretty similar to each other. So they're more or less equal. But if they weren't, I could manually assign weight to each items in this category. So if I had one assignment that was worth more than another and more challenging than another, it was going to take more time than another, but still keep it in this category, I could manually assign. I could choose that to manually assign weight to items in this category. I could also distribute weights by points across all items in the category. And what that means is when I create assignments here, I can make some worth 20, I can make some worth 40, and the 40 point assignments are going to be worth double what the 20 are, what the 20 point assignments are. I'm not going to do that, but I could do that. And that's what distribute weights by points means, is that I'm going to basically adjust the weight inside of this category. I'm going to adjust the weight of my assignments by how many points they're worth. And then lastly, my choice is distribute weight evenly across all items, because as I mentioned, all of my assignments are kind of equal weight. They're homework assignments, they're exercises. And so it's just the nature of my discipline. It might not be the nature of yours. But that's what's going to work for me, is to distribute weight evenly across all items. So this is where I can drop for some reason, the highest or the lowest. So I could drop like the 3 lowest grades. Just so you know, the way gradebooks behave is if I say drop the lowest 3 grades, the first 3 assignments, no matter what they score on it, are the lowest grades. So, you got to wait till, like in my case, I have to wait till the 4th assignment until, the grades really start, the category grade really starts calculating properly. So, okay. And so there's a few other options, again, just for this category. Display the class average of assignments to users, display the grade distribution of assignments to users, or override any display options that I have set for the grade book. So if you remember in my grade book, I just wanted to show, this is all about the student view, just wanted to show the grade scheme symbol. You got an A, you got a B, you got a C, whatever. But in this category, I can choose to also show the points grade. It's not going to work for the whole grade book, but just for this category. So that's what this is all about. So I'm going to create 2 more categories. And so save and new. So I'm going to create quizzes, because I have a couple of those. Let's see, I made the assignments worth 40%. I'm going to make the quizzes worth 30. And I'm going to distribute those weights evenly. I'm not going to drop any grades, and I'm not going to do any of this stuff. So I'm just going to create 1 more. I click save and new, and I'm going to create discussions, because I have those in my courses too, in my course too. And I'm going to make that worth 30% as well. And so, and I'm going to distribute those evenly as well. And so I believe if I save and close, don't worry about this error message. That's to be expected. It's not scaring me. Essentially what it's telling me is I have some cleanup to do in my gradebook. And this could happen to you as well. And this is why it defaults to the manage grades. Because if I already have stuff in here that is not yet assigned to a category, that's what I can do next. So in other words, quizzes is a category, so I do know that. But like my 60s quiz, if I hit the chevron, that's the down arrow next to that, and I choose edit, I know that nothing is in a category yet. So when I look at this and I apply it to a category, okay, because it's a quiz, and when I clicked on the down arrow, I chose quizzes, and I check the grading, that looks okay. When I save and close it, this number goes down just a little bit, 233. So if I choose like this, the rock and roll quiz, I edit that, and then I choose quizzes here, and I save and close it, it's just going to chisel this down. Now it's at 226. Okay, so that's what all this is about. And in this manage grades feature, just one last thing here that I do want you to be aware of, because some of you, might put in all your assignments first. There's a great view here in the bulk edit view, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. If I click next to all my different assignments that I've put in here and all the different tasks that I want to attach in the gradebook, let's just click on these. If I go to bulk edit, so I just selected like 7 different things, and if I go to bulk edit, and I'm just going to zoom out for a second so you guys can see what bulk edit does. I know it's a little small for you, but essentially loads up all those items and all the gradebook information related to those items. So I see the point values here. I know they're all 100. I see that the grading scheme is a percentage. That's fine. But here, see, nothing's in a category. So when I start putting things in their proper categories, and I look over to the left, and I make sure that I'm putting things in their correct categories. And when I do that and I save it, what that's going to do is, see, now I went down another 20 points. I'm getting closer. So again, when I select in the manage grades view, if I see an error message here, if I select things on the left, and then I choose bulk edit, again, over here, I can put everything in its category. will be copacetic. And if I keep doing that, now I'm down to 186. I want to get down to 100. It wouldn't take me much longer to put everything in its proper category. And so that's just how you deal with that, if you can remember all that. But you don't have to remember all that, but that's how you can, is a very quick and easy way to put things in their own category. You select them in the manage grades view, and then you click bulk edit, and you just choose the categories into which they belong. Now, this assumes that you've created that category. And that's why we had the question this morning about, should I create my categories first? Yes, you should. You should set up your grade book first. And then you have those buckets already set for when you pull in your assignments or create your assignments and your tasks for students. You could put them in the right categories when you're actually creating them. Okay. So questions on this grade book. Oh, I wanted to show you how one works. I have, if you have any questions, just let me know. I have a course that actually has students and grades and stuff in it. So I did want to give you sort of a view of, what that looks like. And so, as I mentioned before, I clicked on the grades link. By default, I am in the enter grades view. But if I scroll down just a little bit, this is what I meant by the grade book is kind of a scrolling nightmare. And I know we have a few of you have already taught online, so you probably have a good picture of this. By the way, so final grades, see this final grades, we answered like the question on it like 3 times in the wizard. But this is a grade book with grades in it and all that. And so I just want to show you that at any time, even though we chose what we chose in the grade book, at any time, under every column, we have this little chevron. And here we can edit this column. And when we choose edit, we can make it display for students. I believe we can. Hold on. Let me get back there. Come on. Wow, it's slow. So someone has their mic on. Yeah, if you could turn off that mic, that would be great. Oh, it must be under properties. There's no properties here. So display final like office hours. Leave this properties. Nope. Oh, I know where it is. Sorry. In manage grades, let me get back to it. Wherever it says final, like total. Yeah. This is where we can hide from users. Sorry, I was in the wrong view. I was in the enter grades view. It's in this manage grades view. We can hide it from the users, or we can make it visible to users. Okay, so here I just chose to hide it from users. It shows me a little eyeball with a slash through it, tells me that it's hidden. And then, but if I want to make visible to users, I could do this at any time. This is my point. Even though we chose not to display the final average, if halfway through your first semester, it looks to you like the grade book is working just fine, final averages seem all accurate and everything is running pretty smoothly, you can go into this manage grades view and you can unhide the column. Okay, you don't have to go through the wizard again. You could just unhide the column. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. But I did want to show you just one last thing in the grade book here. And again, I'm inside a different course here. I'm not sure if all of you noticed it. They all kind of look the same. But this one has grades and some bogus students in it. And no matter what, we get this spreadsheet view of the grade book. Okay, so, and this is why, see, like essay on the Ukraine problem in France. This is why if I wanted to create a short name, that might make sense, essay number 1, unit 3 or something. And that would shorten this column because there's a lot of scrolling going on. See all this, and it's just how it goes in terms of that's how I haven't seen a grade book display differently in any learning management system. It's usually a long spreadsheet. So c'est la vie, as they say. Okay. One thing I want to show you is we got 2 more things, the grading process. And so I do have grading in here with students, and I am in, let me just show you where I am. I'm in the main training course that I use. Okay, I created an FIT training course just for you guys, but in this main training course that I have some students enrolled. I went in as those students, and I submitted some work so I could show you the grading process. And so while I know this might seem cart before the horse, I know a lot of this might seem like that, but I think it's important that you see the process. So like, you could sort of reverse engineer your assignments. Again, number 1 is, I'll just repeat what I said earlier today. You will see all of the activity that happens inside your course. Okay, it's not as if you're going to be hunting and pecking and wondering if you can find, where a student submitted something. That's what's great about, by the way, using the assignment forms and these assignment forms in the course. If you have a student do a Google project and submit it as a Google Doc in email, it doesn't integrate automatically into your grade book. And so any gradable activity that you have students do, I do recommend that you have them do it in Brightspace. Even if they do it like in a Google Doc, they prepare it in a Google Doc and all that, when they submit it for grading, I do recommend they submit it into Brightspace, just so that it all stays, in the grade book, by default. Okay. All right, so let's check out the actual grading process. Now, you might think that you click on grades in order to start grading, but in Brightspace, there is a great tool, and unfortunately here I have to dig for it. I think for you, this is going to be a menu item right on top of your courses, and it's called Quick Eval. And what Quick Eval does is it aggregates all of the grading that I need to do as the instructor in my course. So as you can see here, I have essentially 3 students here who have submitted work to me. And what the Quick Eval thing does, feature does, is it just aggregates it all on one screen, so I don't have to go around the course looking for it. Okay, so this is everything that awaits my grading, and it's nice. Usually the workflow in an online course is usually check your email first. Usually the burning fires in any course are usually in email. The the excuses or the need for accommodations or student fetching, whatever you need to address as an instructor, confusion as well. But a lot of that will come through email to you. So usually the workflow when teaching an online course, right, after it's all set up and now it's up and running, is I check my email, I look for those little burning fires, put those out, and then usually I come into my course and I'll get right to the grading because usually students are somewhat eager to see their grades, and so so usually it's the second thing in my workflow as an online instructor. After I'm done grading, usually I'll go into discussions. I'll just read them, see how students are doing. And then lastly, and not least, is I'll create an announcement. Even if the announcement says, oh, great activity in the Unit 3 discussion, or if you're using Padlet or VoiceThread, any of those cool tools that FIT offers up. Quiz coming up on Friday would be an announcement. Be sure to, submit your reflection essays by Tuesday, that kind of stuff. But refreshing your announcements is an important, sort of activity for instructors in fully online courses. It sort of refreshes your presence for the students. So I would recommend like 2 announcements a week. Just to make sure that students see that you're in the course on at regular intervals. And individual students will see that you're grading your stuff. Okay, so let's take a close look at the grading here. Again, I went through a view called Quick Eval, and unfortunately they put it under the course tools. I wish they put it right up here. I think that's where it should be. Quick Eval. And what that does is it brings me this very cool screen, again, where all of my grading is aggregated here for me. And so all I have to do is start grading now. Need to note that these icons mean that these are discussions that I'll be grading, and these are assignments that I'll be grading. I think a quiz is like a question mark or something like that. So I do sort of know what I need to grade here. So let's grade an assignment first. I'm going to grade Jane's assignment. She has an essay on French film. Let's see how she did. So this is what the grading interface looks like. And so here, Jane submitted this attachment. Okay, so I see that. I'm going to click on the attachment. And so over on this left-hand side of the screen, this is where I'm going to look at Jane's work and mark it up if I want to. Now, I just put in, just instruction manual on Brightspace in here. It's the first PDF I found. But on the left, I'm going to read and mark up whatever Jane submitted to me. And then on the right here are all my feedback tools. So as I read through this, first of all, I attached a rubric to this assignment when I created it. So this is my essay rubric, and this is what I mean by grading with a rubric. So the criteria for this rubric was the introduction, the organization, use of specific examples, and the use of standard written English. Now, this rubric isn't completely filled out, but if it were, there'd be a paragraph for each. So in terms of her introduction, I'll say her introduction was exemplary. Her organization was exemplary. Specific examples, maybe satisfactory. Use of standard written English, let's call it proficient. You see that the point values for these are added in automatically right here as I choose the different achievement levels. Okay, and essentially each one of these choices, there's a paragraph of feedback behind it. So in the grading process, when I grade here, and I know this is sort of new to you, but once you get used to your own rubric and you start grading papers with it, it happens pretty quickly. It's usually, you read, you have the rubric in mind, and then it's click, 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 and the grade is generated automatically. I'll show you down below. It's great. It's generated automatically for each piece of criteria. And if I wanted to adjust that, if I was like, it's a little better than an 18, I could adjust that to 19. The final grade is adjusted automatically. So that's 4 paragraphs of feedback and a final grade. Overall grade right here dropped in automatically. I can add more feedback right here. I have those other selections. I can upload a file and do all these cool things. Audio feedback has been very popular in the last couple of years, where, you know, I just give my impressions. Good job, Jane. You know, you might want to take a look at this or whatever. It is a little more personalized, you know, with your voice. So I could do all that. And that's on the right-hand side. So again, this is one of the coolest things about rubrics, is that they allow me to grade quickly. They provide pointed feedback, extensive pointed feedback to the student, and I can, you know, kind of roll through the grading process fairly quickly. And everybody is graded on the same set of criteria, which of course is great too. But over here on the left-hand side, we have some markup tools. And so I wanted to show you that. Sorry, one of the first things I clicked on is the full screen toggle. That's what this is. And so if I click on that, I go full screen with looking at Jane's work here. And so these are my viewing options here on the left. I can zoom in and zoom out. I can scroll through the pages. I can also fit this to the page. For me, this is great. And I can, you know, start marking this up. So I have my markup tools over here on the right. So here is just a drawing tool. And once I do this, I get kind of like Adobe-like controls over here. So I can control the color, and I can control the thickness. And I got all these different cool, you know, filters and stuff like that, but I can draw on this. I have an undo button here. I can undo anything over here. So that's a drawing tool. I have a freeform highlight. I have a text highlighter just for text. So if I choose some text, I can also change the colors. So that's a text highlighter. I have an eraser. And then to the right of that, I have these cool little sticky notes up here. So I can, you know, write in any kind of sticky note I want. And move that around if I want. These sticky notes have all different kinds of icons. As you can see, I chose an arrow there, but there's, you know, little and color choices too. So, you know, so in terms of me providing feedback to my students, you know, there's lots of options here. You know, these sticky notes are great. I have these lines, arrows, you know, so I can create arrows to anything. I can put a sticky note right next to it. So the markup tools are really pretty awesome. And I can undo anything and redo anything I want. So again, if I publish it, what happens is grade goes into the grade book. Okay, and I'm done. I'll go to the next next student. It automatically brings up the next student's work. So that's how I oh, I saved a draft of it. Look at that. I meant to just close it. Okay, let's see if I go back to quick eval. And I could do the same with discussions. So I graded Jane's essay, but if I want to grade Jane's discussion again, what it does is not only does the quick eval aggregate all of the grading that I need to do, but with discussions in particular, it separates out all of the posts by student. So I don't have to roll down a discussion and try to remember who said what to whom. Okay, it shows me all of Jane's contributions into the discussion, and I can just grade Jane's discussion right here. And so I look at it and, okay, so I read, that's fine. I click on my rubric and this is where I start going down. Now this rubric is filled out. So, again, since it's my rubric, you know, I get used to it pretty quickly in terms of grading. So, so I look through it and I just grade her accordingly. The grade is generated automatically. So, question in the chat, can other students see the changes I make? Oh, can the student download the file with all the sticky notes with the highlights? And can other students see, oh, first of all, other students can't see changes on, you know, they can only see their own work. So, I see these, oh, can they be shared? Yeah, not like a Google Doc. No. It's a good question. But no, not like a Google Doc. Now, nothing precludes you from taking a screenshot and dropping that into your course. I mean, if you wanted to share it, but I think, you know, what you have going on in Google is great. All you want to think about is the final graded product needs to be kind of submitted into Brightspace if you want it to connect into your grade book without any like extra work. Yeah. But there's so much functionality in Google, especially the collaborative pieces there. Wouldn't want to discourage you, you know, from working outside of Brightspace. The trick is for you as the instructor is to make sure everyone brings it into Brightspace at one point or another, especially when it comes to the grading. So here in Brightspace, I just graded the discussion. And again, I used my rubric here. And so it was really kind of quick. And again, the student gets 5 paragraphs worth of feedback. Jane gets 5 paragraphs of feedback on her performance in this, all addressing specific criteria. And I'm done with grading Jane. So I'm going to discard those changes. I should have done that with the other one. There we go. So any questions on the grading process? I know, you know, again, it's a little cart before the horse, but I wanted to at least give you a picture of what it is. So, you know, as you're creating content, you sort of have this in mind. So, you know, again, in terms of grading with quizzes, exams, and tests, you can choose questions that grade themselves. And so that's very handy. And in terms of discussions and assignments, I highly recommend rubrics. You know, to expedite the grading process, but also clarify the expectations for students. By the way, rubrics, when we attach them to an assignment or a discussion, when we're creating them, they are automatically visible to students. So students automatically see right away when they launch an assignment, the criteria on which they will be graded. And so, let's just take 10 minutes and look at rubrics. Okay. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them now or you know, pop them in the chat. That's fine too. I'll keep an eye on both.
I have a comment. Can I make
Sure.
a?
Yeah, please do.
Well, I think, you know, I mean, I think it really, the usefulness of pre-made response depends on the course. Like if you have 150 assignments and it's like, you know, there's one way to use VU and there's a way to not use VU, it makes sense to have like sort of automatic response. But when we're asking students to come up with like original thought or original research, and we're asking them to be very precise in their own language, I think that, like, you know, I teach writing, so in the English department, I think that both rubrics and using them as an answer, it doesn't really suffice. I think it's giving a mixed message. It's saying I get to just talk like a robot, but you have to be interesting and specific and pay attention to your language. And you know, the rubrics are, it feels to me like just a kind of an extra bureaucratic layer that kind of distances us from, like, students just don't, you know, we're abstracting from their actual experience of writing and our experience of reading.
Mm.
And that level of abstraction, a lot gets lost that is precisely where the teaching goes on. So I just want to put in a plea to, you know, really think twice about just adopting rubrics, which I know is, I mean, I get pushback from students who say, what's the rubric? I say, it's in the assignment. Like, if you read the assignment, it's got everything embedded in it. You know,
Yeah.
you don't really need some outside thing. And, you know, they grumble, but they, you know, eventually sort of accept that it's like they have to read the assignment, you know.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see what you mean. I definitely see what you mean. Really, a lot of you know, it's kind of interesting as you were describing it, and I was an English major as well. And so what you're saying really resonates with me. You know, sometimes it's in that gray area where you want to be, where what I'm responding to, I think, more is a lot of the student panels that I have seen at different conferences about their experiences as online students. And I mentioned it kind of briefly, but earlier, but when they don't understand the expectations of instructors, it is perhaps the most common point of anxiety that they experience. And I perhaps, you know, that's one of the reasons why I'm such a strong proponent of rubrics. I have done an exercise. I developed a process called Align Your Design, which you know, you got me thinking about it a little bit, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I truly, I am not, because it's not for everyone, and it's not for every assignment out there. But in the Align Your Design exercise that I've developed, it essentially takes the instructions of the assignment, takes the learning objective that assignment is supposed to be, you know, addressing or covering, if you will. And then I try to generate a rubric from the language used in both those, you know, those statements. From the instructions for the assignment, because as you say, and it's a point very well taken that I probably should have made earlier, is that any criteria that you put in a rubric, it should be embedded in the instructions for the assignment. And you know, to your point, Apollonia, if you know, part of your discipline is, well, students have to tease out, you know, from narrative, or, you know, exactly, you know, what's expected of them. You know, maybe a rubric goes a little too far in, you know, sort of spoon feeding them that, if you will. Your point is very well taken. A rubric is not for every assignment, and not for every instructor. What I will say, and I'll just you know, draw your attention to the fact that everything is adjustable within the rubric. So in other words, if I got something that was you know, did not meet the criteria of the rubric, but blew my mind, you know, in a completely different way, I would still be able to, you know, quote, reward that student or grant credit for that assignment, because of the flexibility in using the rubric. In other words, adjusting those levels and my additional feedback that I can offer up to them. However, for a lot of us, you know, a lot of again, what I'm addressing is that need for clarity. If that clarity is, you know, if you're satisfied with the clarity in your instructions, and that's enough for your students, by all means, you know, you don't have to do this. But there are too many students that I've heard over the years say, I got back something and it just said good job. and that kind of feedback is not enough for some students. And it leaves them with, kind of an empty feeling on things that, they work kind of hard on. So, so let's take a look at the functionality. And I'm so glad you brought up the point, because I appreciate it. I should put little quotes around this, like, if needed or if you want it, here's how you create rubrics. Let me show you how. It's under your tools, and I think it's going to be right here, rubrics, but it's also always in the course admin section here. And this I have in this course administration. It's by default, it's set up by category. I like it by name. And so I can find rubrics right here. It's alphabetical listing. And let me just show you, again, I'm going to show you the one that I've already created first, my discussion rubric. If we preview it, really all I want to, one thing I do like about the rubric is that, okay, so it lays out the criteria. And so, so the criteria is laid out over here. And again, in my little exercise, align your design, students, instructors would look, is this all represented in the instructions for, this assignment? So in other words, when I tell the students what I'm going to do here, do I tell them that they have to connect things to course materials? Do I tell them that they're going to be graded on their contribution to the learning community? Again, all in the spirit of clarity. Do I tell them something about writing quality, that, that the use of standard written English is, important on this assignment, and so on this discussion? And do I tell them that they'll be graded on their timeliness? And then what I have here are the different achievement levels. And so when I'm creating a rubric, just so you know, I spend a lot of time, almost, maybe 50% of my time, creating this exemplary column, because the exemplary column is usually the my statement of what my expectations, what my lofty expectations are for students, what a perfect score would be in a perfect world. So on this, ideas and arguments and analysis, ideas expressed include original thought, substantial depth, and are relevant to the topic. Now, even substantial depth, as I look at it, I think that could be a little vague. But the point I'm making here is this is sort of my statement on, really what I would love each and every student to create on this little piece of criteria here. But then as we move to the right across here, these are usually paler versions of this. So what I do is I riff off the ideal and I say, okay, well, I would consider you proficient if the ideas expressed in your discussion posts are mostly substantive and relevant, and if you express some original thought, and demonstrates some logical thinking, reasoning. So again, I'm riffing off of these, but construction of new meaning and insights are evidence. So that's what sort of separates the exemplary from the proficient. But again, and I go to an even paler version. Ideas expressed in the discussion post show a minimal understanding. Okay, and comments are general in nature and occasionally might be relevant. Rehashes, summarizes. And then unsatisfactory is also, again, sort of expressed in the same terms. I guess that's what I'm getting at. If you are going to create a rubric, I recommend the exemplary column first. So that's a preview of a rubric. Let me show you the actual form just so you can see. It's relatively easy to use. Ask for a title. In terms of scoring, it should be custom points right from the get-go. And this is where I put in the achievement levels, where I put in exemplary, proficient, and those there I just made them up. And here's where I put in the criteria, and then next to the criteria is where I put it in the narrative for each. and I adjust all the point values, usually to make it add up to 100 points, but whatever your assignment is worth, like by default, this one's worth 12, but I just start adjusting things. If I want to add criteria on the left, I add a criteria group. Here's add criterion. If I want to add one of these achievement levels, I just click this plus button. I can also throw them away with the trash can. So I encourage you to use that. Lastly, if you want to look for a rubric, like a college essay rubric, let's just say, you'll get more. This one gets 15 million hits. So if you need some inspiration as to what other instructors are doing, I kind of like to go to the images because they just give me, literally a snapshot. So I can just see it. Well, that's not super great. But you will get a lot of hits once you put it in, and you can get like college essay rubric. I could do college essay rubric on the French Revolution, and I'll still get 1 million hits. So there's a lot of rubrics out there, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel on this in terms of, because they do take a lot of forethought. So I'll leave it at that because I know we're out of time, and love to know if there are any last questions.
Rob, I have one more quick question about rubrics.
Yes.
Are the rubrics individual to the courses, or is there like a pool that I can keep rubrics in and say I'm teaching 2 sections, be able to pull them into both?
So you can pull them into both. There is a function here for the import export function. I'm going to go into this course admin link. When you import export copy, it's mainly copy.
Okay.
And that's where you go from one course to another within Brightspace.
Okay.
Okay. They do come over if you've already taught in Blackboard or Canvas or in another LMS. They do come over pretty cleanly, rubrics.
Yeah, I just pulled them all over.
Oh, beautiful.
I asked that question before, so I'm tweaking them.
Yeah. Okay.
But like in Blackboard, you have to export them and then re-import them to the other sections.
Right. Okay. Other questions? Stop my share. Okay, I'd like to thank you all for, a great day. I appreciate your attendance. Oh, Andrea, you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, I do.
Oh, cool.
I'm just still trying to wrap my head around like how to think about assembling a unit in terms of like how much, like how long should a video lecture be, or how many assignments, like that kind of. Do you have any resources or links or something that you can share that might give us some ideas about how to think about that?
Yeah, there's a workload calculator. Yeah, right here. Yeah, this is a really cool tool here, and it just helps us, like, as you can see, right? Oh, I'm sorry, you can't see. Let me share my screen real quick. It just I put the link in the chat for it, but it just kind of like, you put in all this information, course information, writing assignments, discussion posts, other assignments, and it just, once you fill it all out, it does help you sort of calculate, how many hours per week students are going to have to, put in. The general formula is 9 hours a week for a 3-credit course. So three hours per credit. That should be what we aim for in terms of student workload. And yeah. Yeah, but definitely check out that workload estimator. It's pretty cool. It works really well. In terms of the anatomy of a unit, just so you know, some of the universal principles of teaching are in play here. In other words, adult learners always benefit from an overview of what they're about to learn. So preparing them time-wise and you know, giving them like a bulleted list. Here's what we're going to do in the next 10 days of the course or 2 weeks of the course, and giving them a list. In other words, they benefit greatly from foresight, from knowing what's about to come. They can adjust their schedules accordingly, and the adult learner just benefits from that. So the anatomy of a unit is usually an overview, a presentation of content, things they need to read and access and look at, and then usually you engage them. And the engagement is going to be in assignments and in discussions. And then usually toward the end, you have them, you assess their learning in each unit. Okay.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Sure. Other questions? Okay, guys, I'm going to say my goodbyes then today. We are at 4 o'clock. Thank you all for your attention spans. I appreciate all of the input, and I hope I see you someday down the road. Let me put my email in here. If any of you have questions, I want you to consider me a resource for you. Sorry, getting it in there. Oh, it's Robert, not R4 Obert. So I'm going to do that again. I think I got it now. All right. Thanks again, everybody, and hope to see you again.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Antonia.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Oh, okay.
Good.
You're in charge of the recording, Antonia.
Yeah.
Yeah.